All right, let's get going. Hi, and welcome. Thank you all for coming to this webinar and spending some of your Sunday here. I just finished watching the Seahawks play. They won today, so that was fantastic news. Last Sunday when I was in Palos Verdes, they lost the game just before my presentation, so it was a little bit disappointing there. Anyway, today what I wanted to do was talk about some of the new things that are happening with EdgeRater for templates that are coming in November that are going to be of great help to HGSI users and everybody who uses HGSI, including myself. I think you're going to find these templates to be really, really useful. So I mentioned one of these templates when I was at the meeting, and that was the template about auto index generation. The idea behind that is that you can have a template will, instead of having to export 10-year indexes into Metastock from HGSI in order to bring them into EdgeRater, and we do this for things like looking at seasonality. Instead of doing that, which is kind of fraught with all kinds of difficulties, and I won't go into exactly what those difficulties are, but needless to say, the success rate of people doing that was probably only about 50%. So this new way is, I will say foolproof, but I won't say foolproof. It should be pretty good, a good success rate. So probably it will probably have like a 99% success rate. And if you have any trouble with it after this, then you need to email me and we can get it sorted out. We'll get everybody working with this properly. It's really easy, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. And then the new thing, which is something that we talked about at the meeting in Palos Verdes last weekend, is, and I arrived home on Monday, and I've been working on this all week, and now I have something ready. And both of these templates are going to be released November the 1st, which is next Saturday. So the group history template we're going to get into after we look at the auto index generation. But group history is really, really interesting. It basically allows you to look at groups that have been saved. For instance, if you're saving smart groups regularly and they have a date as part of the name of the group, and you save them on a regular basis, or for instance, if you do group inclusion reports and you save them with a name into the group, then what EdgeRater is able to do is read that information from the file system, and I'll show you how to do that, where to save that information, and then give you a fantastically dynamic report that allows you to see exactly what was in the group, when it was in the group, and also view charts and things like that. So this is really exciting. It's something that people were asking for in the meeting, because when you try and do this within HGSI, you can see some information, but you can't see the whole information that should be available to you by being included in those groups. So we're going to talk about that, and so let's get started. Let me close this down. Okay, so first off, we're going to look at the so this is the group history analysis, but first off I'm going to go into the warehouse index generation and talk a little bit about what warehouse index generation is. So when you have downloaded your data in HGSI, there's a warehouse view called a archive view, and basically what that is, if you run archive view or select the archive view on all securities, it's a view which contains columns for many of the fields that are in the HGSI database. So I'm looking at the archive view on here, and so I have, everyone has the same, but what you can see is you've got the symbol field, you've got name, raw combo, raw relative strength, and so on and so forth, industry, major industry, sector, SIC, and then if you scroll this view, which is an HTML, well, let's say it's the warehouse view. If you scroll this all the way over to the right, you'll see there are hundreds of views. Hundreds of fields. And so that's a rich set of information that is available to you in HGSI as part of the warehouse view. But of course, when you go to the following day, that warehouse view changes. But what we can do in EdgeRater is we don't have access to a lot of that information by connecting directly to the HGSI database. But if we save this view on the file system, which is very easy to do, then EdgeRater has access to a lot of this information as well. And the things that it uses for generating the index are the industry column, the major industry column, the sector column, and the SIC code column. So let me show you how that works. If I select File, and I'll say save this as HTML. HTML is kind of the format that's used on the web, and so I save that, allsecurities.htm, and I click Save. I already have a file called allsecurities, so it's just going to replace it. So I can save that anywhere on my file system, doesn't matter. I just have to remember where it is that I saved it. So that's really essentially all you have to do from HGSI, and you would need to do this step. You wouldn't need to do this step every day because the industry group membership doesn't change that often. But you know, if you did this once a week or once a month, it's probably sufficient. So then what you would do is you go into EdgeRater, and with this new template called the warehouse index generation, what you can do is find the location that you saved that file to. And I save this to the following location, so I'm okay with that. And all I have to do then is hit the run button. So I'm going to hit this and we'll see exactly what happens. So the process is, and I've hit this, and you can look at the bottom right left hand corner of the screen, you'll see the progress bar incrementing, but it's going through a lot of work. So the amount of time this takes will depend a lot on the speed of your computer, and has actually a lot to do with the speed of your hard drive. So if you have solid state hard drives, it's going to be a lot faster, and that's the same obviously when you use HGSI and it builds its indexes. You know that if you have a solid state drive, it's actually going to be a lot faster than if you have a spinning hard drive. So it's going to take approximately 3 minutes, and the first thing it's doing is it's reading the HTML file, and I'll show you what I'm talking about while it's doing that. So it's reading this HTML file, and it's looking at the industry. Well, first of all, it's looking at every single stock in this file, and this file has 3,292 stocks in. It doesn't have the entire database because the warehouse view actually, or the archive view, has a filter that doesn't include stocks if they're not a member of an industry group. So this is only stocks that are members of industry groups in here. So the first thing that the EdgeRater is doing is reading the symbols for all of these stocks and going to the HGSI database and extracting 10 years of data for each of those symbols, and it's going to build up essentially a snapshot or a symbol list in EdgeRater for the entire set of stocks that are in that file. So 3,292 stocks, 10 years worth of data. So it's going to build all that, and you can see it's nearly done with that step. But that's the step that actually takes the longest amount of time. The side effect of doing this, or one of the advantages, is that you now actually have 10 years worth of data for all of those stocks, all automatically are now in EdgeRater. So that becomes a symbol list in its own right in the program, and it's something you can use with other templates. So that's a good benefit to start with. But the second thing it does is it then reads this file and it says what stocks are in which industry group. So it will go through and it will look at all the industry groups, categorize them all into the separate groups, and then find out which stocks are in which group, and it will build an index, a 10-year index for each of those industry groups. So that's what it's doing right now for the second step. The third step it's going to do is going to do the same thing, except this time for a major industry. So it's going to go through the whole list, find out which stocks are in each of the major industry groups, and it's going to generate a 10-year index for that as well. So that's the third thing it's going to do. The fourth thing it's going to do is it's going to do the same thing for sectors, and there are 10 sectors in HGSI. There are 10 sectors, and so it's going to build a 10-year index for each of the sectors, and then finally it's going to do exactly the same for this SIC code group, essentially sorting everything by SIC code like this. I just clicked on the header here, and so we can see which stocks are in which SIC code group, and then it's going to build a 10-year index for that. Okay, so when it's done that, you will get back a green, your menu bar here will change to green. It's not quite finished yet, it's still going through some of the processing, so you see it's sort of flickering on and off right now, but it's probably going through the last step right now. But when it's finally done that, it's going to show a completed the completed worksheet of this index generation template, which just is going to tell you the location of all of the files that it's created. And you don't really have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about where it's putting the files. It puts them in places that it knows about, that are normal places for things like symbol lists. So you don't really have to pay any attention to where that is. The only thing you really have to worry about is where you put that HTML file when you save it from HGSI, just because you need to point EdgeRater to that same file. So it's finished now, and it's now telling me that this is the warehouse file name that it used. It created a symbol list for all the securities that are in that file, and the location for that is, well, the name of that is called warehouse all securities. And if I drop now my symbol list down, warehouse all securities is in here, and I can see now I have data up to the 24th of October, Friday's data. And then if I click on the edit button of this list, I'll see that I have, and I look on my data snapshot, I see I have data going from oops, let's see what's going on here. Well, we should have 10-year indexes built for this. So, okay, so by default, it's going to build you 10-year indexes, and just bear in mind this is a pre-release version. I still have the whole next week to work on it, but it's going to automatically build you 10-year indexes. I think that looked to be a 2-year index. But now let's take a look at some of the other indexes that it's built. It's built this warehouse indexes industry.txt. And if I look at that on here, and then take a peek at the snapshot. So yeah, so in this case we see that the index has been built for 10 years. So from 2004 to 2014. That's the index generation part. So this is something that previously, in order to get this information for all of the industry groups, you would have had to have done a whole bunch of exporting into metastock format, building 10-year indexes in HGSI, exporting to metastock format, and importing into EdgeRater. And eventually, if you got that all right, after the 17 or 18 steps that it took to get there, you then had your industry indexes. But of course, then you had to kind of keep them up to date as well. And so it was all sort of, there were a lot of places where that could go wrong. So this is going to be a lot more straightforward. You automatically have this industry group indexes built, and as a bonus you get also the other indexes we talked about. So there's the sector indexes. So here are the 10 sectors, and if I again look at the data snapshot, I see they're built from 2004 to 2014. Okay, 10 years. We've got the same for the major industry, and so major industry is a more coarsely grained organization, so there's only 48 major industries, and SIC code is a finer organization, and there's 364 of those in the various SIC code groups. So having built those indexes automatically, that's a bonus. I mean, that's the point of this template. But what you can do with those industry groups now is something that's more interesting. For instance, you might be thinking, why do I need to have them in the program? Well, looking at the industry group indexes is useful for any number of things, but I think one of the more useful things is now with the seasonality aspect of the program. You can then select the seasonality template, and I'll choose the now template to look at seasonality that's coming into effect right now. And I'll have my warehouse indexes, and I'll look at industry groups, and I'll hit run on this template. We'll wait for a few seconds. And now the template is finished running. And so straight away, just using those two templates, I've now got a good set of information here, which tells me that if I'm looking out over a 3-month time period, and I'm looking at these indexes, I'm looking for things that have a good likelihood, or historically, over the next 3 months. So for November, December, January, because I'm looking at this 3-month column, November, December, January, I'm looking at things here that have good number of up years versus down years over that time frame, and then the average percent of those up and down years. So you can see some good examples here, some 9 and 1s, which basically means over the last 10 years there were 9 up years and 1 down year over the next 3 months. And so having seen that, then you can see what the average, which is the average gain or loss over that time frame. So it could be a negative value if the average was more negative, obviously. So looking at what we're looking at here is wood building materials index. Right, I can see that had 9 up years and 1 down year over the last 10 years, with an average of 14% gain in that time frame. And I can look at the different time frames. I mean, everybody knows what this seasonality template does for you now. You're probably using this on various lists and looking at various stocks with this, and it's great information for finding out what's coming into seasonal favor. But what you can do with this, with the industry groups, is doing it industry group wise is more of a maybe a confirmation, or you could even use it as part of your top down analysis to look at this first, and then look at stocks that are within those industry groups to find out, if you're looking for seasonality, find out seasonality on those, or for any other trading methodology that you're using, where you're trying to kind of get seasonality on your side before you make decisions about buying stocks. So wood building materials is one that's pretty high up in this list. And if you double click on any of these, by now that double clicking brings up a chart. So let's just do that, and my chart came up on another screen over here. And my chart is just showing me what I had selected last, which is actually a 3 chart windows with monthly, weekly, and daily. For the indexes, let me just select this again down here, because you have to sort of select another stock first and then come back into your stock in order to have it kind of stick. It's a little bit of a bug in the program right now, but yeah. So now I'm looking at the wood building materials index, and what I would probably want to do is look at it in a line chart rather than a candlestick chart. The candlesticks were able to be built on the weekly and the monthly because we have the beginning and ending dates of the week and month. You can't build candlestick charts on the daily chart because the index is only essentially a closing price index, so it doesn't have open, high, low, close, so it just gives you these dots. But you can choose to show this as a line chart, okay, and then you get an idea of where this industry group is coming from. Is it rising? Is it falling? And so on and so forth. And in saying that, the other useful thing then that you can do with these industry groups is take a look at the group rotation template. And group rotation is in your Pro Tools category, group rotation, and I'll just run group rotation on this list of industry groups as well. And this will tell me in just a couple of seconds. This will tell me which of those groups have good ranking compared to other groups, based on my settings that I chose right now were a 22-day percentage change and a 5-day average of the rank. And you've probably used this template a lot as well, but just to briefly review what this template is, you can see the values of the 22-day percent change. So for instance now, P&C Insurance is at the top of the list with a 9.52% change over the last 22 days. And if I select that and then bring up the chart, let me just put this down to one chart because I think it's going to be a bit cleaner. So I'll press my 1 over here. It'll come down to the one chart. I'll select line. And now what I'll do is put this side by side just to make it a little easier to see. So as I go through this and clicking on these different worksheets in here, I can see what the actual percentage change over 22 days is for each of these industry groups. The ones that have the highest change over 22 days have come to the top of the list. On the chart side, the top area is the actual index itself. The bottom area, or the first of these sub areas, are the values. So this is telling you the change in 22 days, what that is. Right now you can see in the worksheet that it says 9.52%. And if we go over to the values sub area in the chart, it's currently 9.52. So this is just a graphical representation of what you see on this row essentially of the worksheet. And then if you go to the middle area, this is where it gets kind of interesting, is you see the average rank. And average rank is essentially taking the values, ranking them in terms of a percent rank, which is basically keeping the same order but giving them a percent value. And then the average rank is taking the average of those percent ranks over n days. In this case I chose 5 days. So what you can see here, this is smoothed by 5 days, but it is a ranking rather than an actual value. So the top area here is the actual value, and the sub area in the middle here is the ranking, or the average rank. So it's interesting because you can look for divergences to see, well, if rank is changing, if actual percentage value is changing but rank is not changing, or it's changing faster, those are kind of things that you can look for here. And the bottom area is just the actual essentially the daily rank change. But what's interesting if you're looking at group rotation, I think, is not so much what's at the top of the ranking right now, because if you look at the chart here in the middle, you can see that things don't stay ranked number 1 for very long. They get to a high rank and they stay there for a few days, and then they sort of drift down to be a lower rank. And there's rotation going on here, and that's the whole idea of the template, is to show or try and give you an indication of group rotation. So what you would probably want to do is go down to some of the more lowly ranked stocks or industry groups in this case, and try and find things that are coming into favor. So maybe you don't want to start at 0. You might want to start at things that are, for instance, 30%, meaning they're 30% of the rank, so almost a third of the way up the list. And then you can sort of take a look and scout through these just quickly, taking a look at the average rank and seeing if the rank value looks like it's coming up. In this case it does a little bit, looks like it's rotating in a little bit. And you can also get a feel for whether it actually has any kind of cyclical nature to it. So that's one thing you can do with the industry groups. Like this one here looks quite nice in that it does have a cyclical nature to it, or it looks like it has a nice more cyclical nature than some of the others. And perhaps this one is now coming into favor. Measurement instruments, which is a bit of a weird one. We can't tell right now from EdgeRater what exactly is in those industry groups. That will be coming, but it's actually very easy from HGSI to see what's in those industry groups and then use them within EdgeRater. So for instance, in measurement instruments, if I bring up my my HGSI toolbar, and I take a look in the designer, and I go into industries, and I look down in my industry groups at measurement instruments down here, I can see exactly what's in here. And of course it's really easy for me to then say just export that into EdgeRater, and essentially I'm done, and I can now take a look at measurement instruments in here and get myself a and I'll say I'll try and get 10 years of data for this one as well, and I'll hit the update button, and immediately it's built me a symbol list with all the data that I need for measurement instruments. And then you could, for instance, run measurement instruments on this template, and you then get an idea of rotation within measurement. So you already know that measurement instruments looks like it's coming into favor, and now you can kind of do the same thing with the components of measurement instruments. So let me just give an example of what that would look like. If I select my let's look at the values worksheet, or actually let's look at the average rank worksheet. And I'm sorry this is a little bit collapsed on your computer because I just have one screen to show. Even though I have 3 screens here, I can only display one of them in the webinar. So so then you can kind of get a look for rotation within this, if that's what you were looking for. But also what you could do with measurement instruments is then say, well, I know it seems to be rotating into favor. What has good seasonality? In which case you would find your seasonality template, click on now, and then say, let's look at what has seasonality that's coming up that's good for the next 3 months. So I click on my number of up years, so I have a 10 and O. Mesa Laboratories has an average of 13% gain in each of the last 10 years for essentially November, December, and January. That's what the 3 months means. It's 3 months from now. That's why it's called the now template. So you can see that might be a good candidate. At least you have seasonality on your side with this particular stock. And if I just bring up any old chart with this in, and I'll go back to a candlestick chart, and actually while I have this up, I can just select a layout. So if you may be interested in any of the other layouts, obviously you can select them from here. And a layout that I like to use, one of the ones I like to use, is Code Blue. It's a good set of information on here. So you can see Mesa Laboratories has potentially looks to be turning around, and maybe it's going to fulfill the seasonal behavior that it's exhibited in the past. So anyway, that's one thing you can do. So the new thing there, what I just showed you, by the way, in group rotation, that is already in the program. You already have that template. If you have the October templates, you already have that. So so you can play with that for all of the symbol lists you currently have. What you don't have is the index generation template. So that's coming, and that November the 1st is the release date for that. And so you see I'm currently working on it. What's new for November? Next Saturday this will be released, and it's the auto-generate HGSI indexes from the warehouse file. Excuse me. And that will get you all of those symbol lists generated automatically without any hassle. So nice feature there for coming up for HGSI users for November. The second nice feature is this is something we discussed while we were at the workshop, and the HGSI workshop last weekend was we had a good time. And one of the things that I found really useful, and talking to other people they found to be extremely useful, was this idea of group inclusion reports within HGSI. So yeah, okay, just looking at my my chat box. Good. So first of all, give me a why if you use the group inclusion report at all, ever. For whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. If you ever use group inclusion report, give me a why. Okay, good. A lot of people. Now, give me a why if you use group inclusion report to do Ron's top 50 group inclusion, to get your top 50 that Ron talks about. Yeah, sometimes some people say yes. Yeah, Craig. Yeah, so that's that's something we did at the workshop last weekend, and we learned about. And let me just sort of briefly tell you what that is, so that we can be on the same page when I'm talking about this. So let's bring up my HGSI here, and I'll come over to the designer, and all right. So we have a bunch of smart groups, obviously, and these smart groups are updated every day, and they have this. They all have essentially they have a name for the group that starts with the date. 10/24/14, because this is the latest smart group. But the group inclusion report is something that you can use. It's under your tools. I select group inclusion report, and it's basically a way of saying, give me a report. Let me clear that, and then we load a selection. And you'll see what I mean here. When it comes back. Okay, let me bring this out of the way. Okay, so it's selected 201 groups, and I can look through here and see what groups it selected, just so I know what's going on. But it's basically selected everything that's in an industry, and then from the smart groups it selected some of the best smart groups. So it's looking for bullish candidates on the price zone oscillator and volume zone oscillator. It's looking at the sprinters under the Gallardi smart group. It's looking at 52-week highs under the Woodward and Brown and high retraces, consistent earnings and demand. So it's got a kind of a mix of filters and combos in each of these groups. So it has some fundamental information, and it has a lot of technical characteristics. And what this report tries to do, or does actually, is goes and looks at each of those groups and finds the stocks that are common among the groups, and essentially gives you a union of all of the stocks essentially that are in these groups. And then it so let me just run that rather than talking about it. Let's hit OK. Oh, and of course what you should do is, and what I didn't do here, but it doesn't really matter because I've done it before, you should have also chosen to create a group with that, with the result of that. But you essentially save it as a HTML file, and HGSI goes ahead and figures out what's in which group. And you see here that allergen is in 11 groups, so that's pretty high on the list. FNHC is in 10 groups, that's on here. It tells you the 10 groups that's in, and so on and so forth. So this is an HGSI output file. It's an HTML file that essentially shows you stocks, and I believe there are 50 in here, that appeared in multiple groups. Okay, and some of the best groups, bullish groups in HGSI. All right. Now, in addition to doing that, what you would normally do is, when you've created the HTML file, you would also have chosen to create yourself a user group with that information in too. And if you keep a history of those, as you do this every day, you're going in and finding the things in that report every single day. You would then save, as Ron does, and you don't have to save them under month folders, but you would just save them in a location, and you put the name of the, you put the date that you ran that group inclusion report, you put that in to the name of the group. And so then you have a list, and as I look through this and I scroll through, this is actually now saved that grouping in HGSI, and I can quickly look through here. So I go back down to the 24th, and I can see, allergen was in here somewhere. There you go, allergen, and all of the other stocks that I saw in that report are actually contained now in the group as well. So I can look at and find what's in the other groups. But here's the thing: wouldn't it be very useful to be able to say, is this the first time allergen made an appearance in this group, or was it also in the group yesterday? If I want to see if it was in the group yesterday, well, I could select yesterday's group and then have a look and see. It looks like it wasn't in yesterday's group. Maybe it was in the day before. It wasn't in there, and then I can go through each of these groups and I can find out, when it made an appearance. It's manual, tedious work that you don't really want to do, and so having talked about this with Ron and people at the workshop, there's a better way to do this. And so what I've come up with is what you can do from this list of groups is export that. Basically, you say ASCII utilities, export group as list, and you export it to a location. Again, doesn't matter where, but just remember where it is when you export it. And I'm going to export it to a location called history top 50 GIR. I'll click OK. I'm not going to do it because I did it before already, but I'll show you exactly what it creates. Doesn't take long, actually. I could have done it again. Let me bring up the file system and I'll show you what it's created. Alright, I saved this under history top 50 GIR, and it's basically mirrored the grouping information from HGSI on your file system. And if we look at October 24th, 2014, there's the one file for October 24th. And, oh, that's very... I think that's because I put the font up pretty high, but let's take that back down to a normal value. Oh, that's better. Okay, so now we see, it's a text file containing those stocks for that day, and we can now use this with the template within EdgeRater. The important thing is that the name of the group has to have the date that the group was created. That's the way that EdgeRater is going to know what date the groups were created and what was in the groups on the certain dates. Okay, so having given you an overview of that, and probably most people knew all of that already, but I know there are some that didn't. So, and it never hurts to review, right? All right, now we'll come back to EdgeRater, and the other template for HGSI for November is the group history analysis template. Group history analysis. All we have to do is choose the location that essentially the root location. Let me bring that file back again, the file browser. And you can see that everything is under history top 50 GIR. So I'm just going to choose that root location as the location for my group lists folder in here. And the template, when that runs, it's going to look down that tree and find everything that's underneath that folder and all the files and everything. You'll also notice that Ron also saves, as well as saving the top 50 GIR every day, on the weekend he also saves another file called weekend top 50 from top 50. Now when I'm looking at this in the template, I don't really want to look at the weekend top 50 from top 50 because that's trying to roll up the information from the week, and I'm doing that within the program. So what I can do is say exclude a group if the name contains weekend. and click OK. Click OK. Okay, there we go. So now we have the settings set. I'm looking for the right folder, and I'm looking for excluding groups if the name contains that. And all I do then is press run, and actually very quickly it analyzed all those files and it came up with, going back through to 5/9/2014, which is the first date of that that we were saving groups for. And the benefit now is I can just click on my the header, the date, to sort by whether or not it was included in the group. So every day, and now let me shrink this down a bit, every day you should have 50. If I shrink it down too far, you can't really see what's going on, so I won't do that. But anyway, every day there should be 50 in a group. So if I wanted to see what's in the group on, well, let's take the very last day, and we'll look for our allergen again. Okay, so clicking on this column, this is showing me everything that was in the group on 10/24 on Friday. So allergen is in here as we expect. Now what I did in HGSI, I went back a couple of days and I tried to find allergen on 10/23. It wasn't there, remember? 10/22 it wasn't there either, but it was there on 10/21. I can quickly and easily see this within EdgeRater. Now if I wanted to see things that are common between the 2 days, I can sort by 10/23 and then sort by 10/24, and all of the ones that have yes in both columns were obviously in those groups on both of those days. So that's how you'd find commonalities. You want to find unique ones, well, look beyond the commonalities, and then we're going down, but I can still see that Micron, for instance, even though it wasn't there on 10/23, it was there on 10/21. And I can go further down, and then I find clear patches. Okay, like Mackensen Group, Omnicare, they haven't been in there for quite some time. And if I scroll right over to the right hand side, you can see they haven't, Omnicare in fact hasn't made an appearance for a long time, may actually be the first time ever. So it's great having this information in the template, but of course we have to take it one step further than that and see a chart. So this is where it gets even more interesting. Let's bring this up. And I'm guessing that you can't see my chart at a point here. Alright. Hang on one sec. Uh-oh. Yeah, bear with me. Right. What I should make sure is that I have a symbol list selected, for instance all securities, just so that when I'm trying to view a chart it's going to show me information from the symbol list. Alright, and so here's the chart. And let me just pop this over there, and I'll pop this over there. Okay, so as I scroll through this, the top part of the chart is showing me just the open, high, low, close stock chart as per normal. And Marilyn, this is going to be released November 1st. So both those templates are going to be November 1st. So next Saturday. All right. And at the bottom of the chart, in this sub area, you can see essentially an indicator which shows you when it made an appearance in that group. You don't have to look through all the yeses in the template. You can actually just see it from the indicator on the chart. And obviously then very quickly you can scroll down through the list and find things that are just appearing, things that have been appearing for a long time, and so on and so forth. If we go to the very end, I said Omnicare hasn't made an appearance for a while. Let's just see if that is true. Let me find that. Omnicare. Okay. Yeah, so that's true. It's the first time it made an appearance. Omnicare, you can see that the blue indicator down here is indicating it's appeared today. But if you look back in the history on that indicator, it hasn't appeared any time previously. So maybe that's something of interest. I mean, obviously you have to put more into it than that. It looks quite it's had quite a run recently, so yeah. So but anyway, you can tell things that are coming in to those groups very quickly. Now say you wanted to do a little bit of little research. So you say, that's great that I know what's in the group today, and now I have to monitor that going forward, right? So several months from now, you'll come in and say, well, how did they do? Well, what you can do obviously is go back to a previous point in time, maybe the very first day of the report, or any other day, and find out all of the stocks that were making an appearance, and click on those. Now we know. Now we can see what's happened since then. Okay, Lannett Corporation made the first appearance down here, and made continual appearances. And by the way, if you ever see a flat top on the blue indicator, it just means it was in for more than one day in a row. But you can see where it first started making an appearance. Micron, you can see that it had a flat top on this blue indicator for several days. That looks even like it might be a month that it was in those group inclusion reports for a whole month at that point. And so you can quickly go through and see all of that information, which I think is really really useful. Let's see. Craig says, he lost his audio. Okay, I can't really do anything about that if you can't hear what I'm saying. So anyway, let me continue. All right, so useful, right? Now, group inclusion is just one of the applications for this, and a very good application. But think about now, this is more of a general approach. And remember that I said previously that all of these groups, all of these smart groups, also have dated group names. So if you've been pulling the smart groups down and saving them every day, for instance, as I have on my computer, and I have the history of top 50 group inclusion. I also have history of smart groups, the Woodward and Brown smart groups and Morales-Catcher groups only, from January all the way through October. Okay, and I look in here. Okay, so I can see all of the groups. You have groups of leaders, HGS 100, growth stocks, etc., etc. So an extension then of doing it with group inclusion report only is to run the template on your history of smart groups. So I also did an export of those groups onto my file system. Let me show you that for those who don't believe me. Okay, so that's under here, smart groups, Woodward and Brown, Morales-Catcher. Exported those as lists, and so there are lists in here. You see how the tree has been built. There's quite a lot of information in this tree of files. Okay, but you obviously don't want to look at it by opening up all the text files and seeing what's in the groups. What you would do is you might have an idea that you want to see what was in. You're particularly interested in a smart group of leaders. Okay. Only. So you come to the template, we select the root location for that tree, which was on my file system, and I put it under smart groups, Woodward and Brown, Morales-Catcher, so I select that. And now I'm going to say, instead of doing exclude of the weekend like I did with the group inclusion report, I'll say include only groups that have leaders in the name. Okay, leaders, and hit run on there. And so it's going to go through. There's a lot more information for it to go through here, but it still won't take that long. And now it's going to come up and show me all stocks from essentially it should be January the 1st. Okay, so I know now that all of these stocks were in the leaders group on January the 1st. Alexion. Let's bring up my chart. It's over here. And let's pull that onto the side. Okay. And I'll have to select Alexion again. Oops. Went too far. Okay. So, here we go. January 1st. Let's go back to over here. That's when first we started collecting data for the smart groups, January 1st. All right, so I know this was a leader, or in the leaders group, the smart group, January 1st. And all of these were January 1st, they were in there. So, you know, this is rich information that actually you won't get this information anywhere else. There's no other program like HGSI, which is actually going to save these groups for you, which includes both fundamental information and technical information on a daily basis. This I think HGSI is probably the one place where you're going to be able to do this and get really solid information about what was appearing in those groups at that time. So, and then obviously with the combination of EdgeRater, you're then able to sort of go in and really analyze what happened. So I think the two programs in this case work super well together. And anyway, this is something I came up with after talking with people at the seminar. And I hope that hope you think that you'll find this useful. I know I'm I wish I had time to do some more trading, but you know, actually working on more software now. But the goal is eventually to get to a point where I can you know, just do a monthly template and then focus on some trading too. That would be very nice. But I find now that if I try and do trading as well, it really takes a bit of time away from doing the development of the software. And right now there's a lot of development going into the software, and I think you probably see that, you know, it's actually being improved just every month. It's getting much better and more functionality. So I hope you'll like that functionality. Does anyone have any questions? If you have a question, please type it into the box. If you don't have a question, let me just ask you a question. Okay, if you think on a scale of, and you can be honest about this, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being super useful, 1 being I'm never going to use this, enter the number that's appropriate for you in terms of this template on 1 to 5. 5, you're going to use this and you're looking forward to using it and you think it will be really useful. 1, meaning that you probably won't use it. Okay. All right. I'll tell you the results in a second. Yep. Wow, okay, so let's see. Great. Okay, so the result of that question was that it seems that we have, well, I can't exactly count them, it's quite a lot, but it seems that I would say maybe 85 to 90% of the people have given this a 5, and nobody's given it a 1, so nobody's actually never going to use it, and some people are going to use it. Perhaps they're not really sure. Okay, yeah, and that makes sense. But I think it sort of opens it up. You know, you have the rich information in HGSI, and you know if you've been saving that on a daily basis, you've probably always been wondering what you're going to do with that information. Well, now this is a really good use for that information. So one question. Let's see, Marilyn. Will we be able to get the history from you to do this one? That's interesting. If we've not been saving that info. Well, first of all, I would say start saving that information, because if you're saving the information, it actually, I believe it helps it helps you if you do this on a daily basis, because it forces you to take a look at some charts and at least do a little bit of work in the night to have a process down that you follow. And I think that can be important in trading. So that's one thing. The second thing is, can you get the history? I'm sure you can. Now it's not, HGSI is not my program, so I can't say for sure whether you can get that. But I'll talk to Ron and see what he says about it. But you're right. It's useful to have that back history. So I hope so. Any other questions? Yeah, there are a lot of templates. There's a lot of templates, Craig, and there's more coming. Now, the important thing to know with templates, as you do know, is that you don't have to use everything. And I don't know anybody who uses all of these templates. But I know that all of the templates are used by somebody. So you have your own trading style. You have your own people you follow. You have your own processes, but there's something of use for you. So yeah, I don't expect everybody to use all the templates, and I think it would be terrible actually if you did, because you'd be so sidetracked all the time and not focusing on a single process. And I think everybody has to have their own process they follow to be successful in this business. So, but the features are there, and that's part of the job of for me as a software developer, is to try and put in useful features that a lot of people are going to use. But also I know that not everybody's going to use everything. Yeah. So yeah, okay, John. Yeah, same as what I said to Marilyn. I'll have to talk to Ron about that. Okay. So good. All right. I think that's it for what I wanted to show. That's the release date for this is all November the 1st, so next Saturday, and I will send an email out. Obviously, it's going to be the normal update process. So what will happen is when you load EdgeRater on Saturday morning, it will say there's an update, and it will update itself. And then you'll have to go and update your templates, just like normal. What you'll see is in here you'll see 2014.10. That's what you have right now. 10 being October. 2014.11 for your template set will be next month's template set. And if you don't have, if you see it turn red, it means it's not the current set. And then you press Get Latest Templates to get the latest set of templates. It's red on my machine, but just because it's different to, I'm actually working with the latest version, and it's not the official version. That's why it's red on my computer. But if I was running my non-development machine, that would be green, because I have 2014.10 like everybody else. Hey, thanks, Marilyn. All right, Scott would like a session on creating a custom template to run against specific criteria if possible. Yeah, I think that would be useful. So there's been some interest actually recently from others as well in doing something around scripting, and I think the idea around scripting, I think that would lead to a good essentially session or series of sessions where we go from writing scripts to building templates. And what you'll find you'll be able to do once you understand how to put these templates together is you'll easily be able to put templates together like pretty much any of these templates in here. If you have a set of scripts that you like, like your George Lee scripts, well then you would essentially write a script to follow those patterns, and then you'd put them into a template. I can show you how to do that, and I will show you how to do that. And I think we'll do that in November. It's going to be after this release, obviously. And I was thinking around the middle of the month. Good. So it's a little more technical than most people would want, and so it's it's not something you have to do. But if you are into it, and I know a lot of people are, then I think it would be useful. Okay, great. Yeah. So okay. Okay, we'll have to talk about that later, Craig. Okay, yep. Thanks, Scott. I'll look out for your email. Okay, great. Well, I think we're just about done. I will send this recording out to the list of people who signed up, and you can review it at your leisure. And by the time this appears in the software next weekend, I'll also have another video or a couple of videos about how to use those individual templates to do what we just talked about. So thanks all for listening, and yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Craig. And we'll see you next time. And Marilyn, I haven't forgotten about setting up a regular webinar when I'm available to answer anybody's questions about the software. So we will do that on a regular basis. Okay. Oh, and Marilyn, also, I remember you asked me last week about whether with the index generation, whether you had to do this every day. And I sort of said, yeah, of course you have to do it every day, but it was misleading, because you don't have to do both steps every day. You only have to do the piece within EdgeRater every day, which is run that template. The step of saving the warehouse as an HTML file, you only have to do that once in a while. Essentially, once you've saved it there, that information about what stocks are in each group is not going to change every day, but it might change once a week or once a month. You might want to redo that step. So yeah, you in order to get your latest data, you have to run the EdgeRater template, but the piece of exporting HGSI you do probably once a week or once every month. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, well, thanks all for joining, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye now.